Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really provocative psychological framework from a recent presentation by PsychDepth. It tackles a mystery that has literally baffled guys for decades. Why do some men effortlessly attract romantic interest while others just struggle immensely, even if they seemingly do everything right and have it all perfect on paper? We're going to break down PsychDepth's theories step by step to see exactly how they map out the hidden mechanics of desire. So let's start with a fascinating paradox they present right off the bat. Picture this. On one hand, you've got the perfect on-paper guy. He's at the gym every day, runs a six-figure business, maybe drives a flashy sports car. But his interactions, they're polite, sure, but completely emotionally distant and lacking any real passion. Then, on the other hand, you have this seemingly ordinary guy. He might live in a tiny studio apartment and drive a total beater, and yet, he effortlessly commands attention. Women are obsessively pursuing him. According to the source material, pretty much everything society teaches us about why this happens is completely backwards.
Which brings us to Section 1, the attraction checklist myth.
The presentation argues that modern dating advice sells us a totally flawed blueprint for how attraction actually works. Just look at the frustrated guy on the left. He spent years accumulating wealth and getting ripped, assuming these are the literal inputs that guarantee romantic success. It's like a math equation to him. But then contrast him with the magnetic guy on the right. He has absolutely none of those impressive external credentials, but he's the one being pursued aggressively. This right here highlights a massive disconnect. It suggests that women aren't actually falling in love with a resume or what a guy can buy them.
And this is what the source calls the blueprint lie. Society basically hands guys a checklist, right? Accumulate status, make money, get in shape, learn some tactics to show off your worth. But PsychAdapt argues this creates a completely false assumption that female desire is just some logical, calculated response to your external achievements. Guys who strictly follow this checklist end up super frustrated and bitter, mostly because they're following a map that, according to this framework, leads absolutely nowhere.
Right, so if the checklist is a myth, what actually works? Let's dive into Section 2, energy over inventory. The core concept they introduce here is called sexual market value discrepancy. Now, the source posits that a deep, consuming attraction only happens when a woman perceives a man's value as significantly higher than her own. But here is the absolute kicker. That value isn't based on objective measurements like income or physical symmetry. Not at all. It's determined entirely by his internal state and her perception of his energy. They sum it up perfectly with this quote: "Sexual market value is about energy, not inventory." Imagine being in a crowded bar. You've got a multimillionaire and a completely broke guy. The broke guy drops this perfectly timed, witty response to the group. He's not trying to be funny or impressive, he's just totally authentic and confident. In that exact fraction of a second, the framework argues, his perceived value completely eclipses the millionaire's. It truly is about how you carry yourself, not what you carry in your wallet. So you might be wondering, what exactly kills that perceived value? Let's look at Section 3, the validation death spiral. The source suggests women operate on this subconscious frame of value system. When she meets a guy, she isn't running a mental background check on his net worth. She's scanning his energy signature. Unconsciously, she's asking herself, does this guy actually know his own worth? Is he comfortable in his own skin? Or is he desperately looking for my approval so he can feel good about himself? Literally within seconds of that subconscious scan, a guy gets sorted into one of two categories: above me or below me. And here's the cruel irony, the source points out. If a guy works too hard to impress, like showing off his wealth or flexing his intelligence, he inadvertently signals that he lacks inherent value. Seeking that validation is described as the absolute kiss of death. It basically tells her, hey, I don't think I'm good enough on my own, which instantly drops him straight into that below me category. And that traps him in the successful beggar mindset. Just look at this breakdown. A staggering 90% of his identity relies on external achievements, while only a tiny 10% comes from internal self-worth. The presentation labels this the validation death spiral. He might have the world to offer externally, but because he's practically begging for approval to feel worthy, his energy absolutely repels true attraction. Okay, so if seeking validation is the attraction killer, what actually creates it? Let's get into Section 4, triggers of true attraction. One incredibly powerful trigger they discuss is pre-selection. Now, the source is super careful to clarify what this actually means. We are not talking about amateur bragging or awkwardly flirting with the waitress in front of your date. That just proves you're trying way too hard. Genuine pre-selection is a subtle, grounded energy.
It's radiating the vibe of a guy who genuinely has options, but isn't desperate to exercise them. When a woman subconsciously senses that authentic abundance, it naturally sparks intense curiosity. And this completely shifts the focus toward the type of confidence a guy possesses. Conditional confidence is built on fragile external assets. If you lose your money or your abs, your confidence completely evaporates. The source argues that's not real confidence at all. Genuine confidence, on the other hand, relies on absolute self acceptance and internal peace. It's unshakable, it's magnetic, and honestly, it is incredibly rare. So, how do you actually embody that? The framework lists 4 core traits of magnetism. First, absolute presence, like actually being engaged and totally fine with silence, instead of panicking in your head about your next move. Second, stoicism, being like a rock in a storm, emotionally stable no matter how you're tested. Third is non reactivity. And finally, grounded polarity, holding a calm, centered, masculine presence that just makes a partner feel safe and secure. Now, here is a wild, counterintuitive point the source explicitly makes. Sometimes the most attractive thing you can do is say no to sex. It sounds crazy, right? But by not making physical pleasure your desperate primary goal, you demonstrate profound abundance and self control. Valuing a genuine connection over immediate gratification proves you don't rely on her for validation. And paradoxically, that makes you vastly more magnetic. All right, so how do we actually make this monumental shift? Let's move to section 5, achieving internal peace. The actionable steps presented are meant to drive a fundamental transformation from the inside out. Step 1, audit your motivations. Honestly ask yourself, are you pursuing goals for you or just for the approval of others? Step 2, cultivate true presence in your daily interactions. Step 3, embrace your actual authentic self and ditch whatever societal programming told you you're supposed to be. And step 4, develop emotional stoicism. Do the hard inner work necessary to heal your insecurities and regulate your own emotions. Crucially, though, before we wrap up, the original presentation issues a very stark, serious ethical warning. They explicitly state, do not use this knowledge to manipulate or harm women. The framework insists that these psychological principles have to be used to foster genuine connection and mutual attraction. The goal here is to become a better man, respected by everyone, rather than using these insights for selfish exploitation. Which brings us to the culmination of this entire philosophy. According to the source, the ultimate secret is this massive paradigm shift. You have to improve yourself from a place of self love rather than a place of self rejection. You hit the gym or build the business because you want to, not because you feel like you have to hit arbitrary milestones just to be deemed worthy of love. True attraction just happens naturally when you no longer desperately need anyone else to validate your existence. And we'll leave you with this final, really provocative thought derived straight from the source material. Are you building a life just to impress others, or are you doing the hard inner work to become a man you actually respect and admire? If the framework we've unpacked today holds true, answering that honestly might not just transform your romantic life, it might just be the absolute key to finding genuine internal peace. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I really hope it gave you some clarity on this fascinating perspective.